just because you're a trader doesn't mean it changes who you are and exactly sort of your trajectory. I think it just gives you a little bit more freedom, really.
Two traders, Darren and Walter, pull back the curtain on profitable trading systems, consistent money management, and profitable psychological triggers. Welcome to the Two Traders Podcast.
Welcome to the Two Traders Podcast. It's Walter here, and I've got Darren on the line. How are you going, Darren?
I'm really good, thank you, Walter.
So, interesting idea, Darren. I'm going to basically let you launch this episode with the question that I think is something that is probably on a lot of traders' minds. In particular, those traders who are looking for some guidance or a mentor or someone to sort of leverage off of their experience. This is probably something that comes up quite a bit. So what are we going to talk about today, Darren?
Well, it's a question that I kind of get asked in a roundabout way a lot of times. And it is this notion that if you can trade fairly consistently and successfully, why are you not mega rich with like a massive yacht, houses all around the planet, Bentleys and Ferraris? If you can trade, why have you not got that? So for me, I can only speak from my point of view. For me, is because it's not just about the money, okay? And for me, it's about finding a scenario where I'm comfortable, and that's not just in my trading strategy, it's in all of the other elements of my life that go around that as well. And I find that if I push myself out of that comfort zone too often, I find it difficult to stay consistent with my trading. So what it leads me to think is that it's not just about the strategy that you trade. There's a lot more to do with it than just that, and you kind of have to find like a comfort zone. Maybe it's kind of a belief thing. Maybe you kind of have a belief system where you kind of fit in the world and what you should be. And if you try and kind of change that into something that's unnatural for you, then sometimes the wheels can come off. And yeah, that's my gut feeling on it.
Right. So I've got so many thoughts on this, and I think this is going to be one of my favorite episodes. This is such a great topic, Darren, and I really appreciate you bringing this up. But I'm more interested in kind of digging into what you just said about how trading fits in your life. This is something that I believe that most traders, one of the reasons why they get into trading is they think they're going to make a lot of money. The other reason, I think, and probably the real driving force behind it, is they want to free up their lives. So instead of working a job where someone's telling you when you have to come in and when you have to go and how many weeks a year you can have a holiday and what you get paid and all these things, these constraints that are on top of your life, basically your job and your boss or your manager, your company, they dictate how often you're going to see your wife or your husband, and your kids. And all this is sort of structured based on you making money for the company or the business or whatever it is. It could be your own business. But most traders, I think, are drawn to this idea of freedom because you can get away from those constraints, and you have a little bit more, relatively speaking, you have a little bit more freedom in terms of creating your own life based on how you trade. Is that really what you're talking about?
Yeah, I think so. And I think you kind of have to be honest with yourself about who you are, I think, with trading. And I think when you start to become more consistent with trading, and I find the truth comes out, if you like, really about who you are. And I think the people that can recognize that and kind of use it to their advantage perhaps go on to be more successful at trading. It's kind of knowing yourself really and knowing what you really want. And often when you're in a scenario that you want to change, you have this kind of idea of this person that you want to be, but on the journey to being that, you hopefully you'll find out the real you, and you can find out the things that you really want to achieve, and the things that you can achieve as well. because we all have this psychological makeup and stuff that we carry with us, and you can't necessarily get rid of all of that, and you're kind of better to sort of go with it and work with it rather than fight against it. So, for instance, I've never pictured myself as being mega rich on a yacht, millions of pounds. So it's not like a reality that I can kind of feel comfortable with, and I think that probably holds me back if I try and achieve that as well. And I've noticed that, because when I reach a certain size trading, then it severely affects the decisions I make, and it's almost like I can't trade my normal strategy when I've got too big a position size. And it's like I try to stick to how I normally trade on a smaller size, but I can't seem to do it. So that might be like my personal relationship with money, but I think that's that is something that I don't know. Is it unique to me? I think we all go through that.
Oh yeah, absolutely. One trader who I have a lot of respect for, he taught me that exact idea that you're talking about, and I know two traders who have this issue where they get their accounts to a certain level and then everything just breaks. so you know what I mean? They can build it up, they can take a small account and build up to a certain level, and then it's just over. And so the question becomes, all right, is this going to be the way I'm going to operate? So how do I structure everything? Do I just keep building up these accounts to a certain level and then starting all over? Because I think you're right. I think one of the things that is underappreciated in the trading world is the fact that your relationship with money is also a part of the formula that dictates your success as a trader. And I'm using success loosely here, as loosely determining your success. What I mean by that is the amount of money. Now, there are a lot of other things that go into it, and some that I'd love to talk about here today. But for right now, I think you've really painted this. We're in this corner here where we're looking at this idea of your relationship with money. And this is such a key, critical thing. There's a book that was recommended to me by this trader. Again, I have a lot of respect for this trader, and I learned a lot from him. And he basically taught me that you really need to get this right. If this is something that you really want to adjust and move, then you've got to take a really close look at what your relationship with money is like, and where did that come from, right? And that means looking at your background, looking at your childhood, looking at your family, looking at certain experiences in your life that sort of dictate how you see wealth and rich people and money and all these sorts of things. And I have a book that I can recommend to all the listeners here. You can see that in the show notes down at the bottom of this page. We're at twotraderspodcast.com. But for right now, I just wanted to acknowledge that I think you've really hit on something that is forgotten about trading, which is it forces you to learn about yourself. And like you say, if you don't work with this, if you don't apply this, because it's almost like trading is giving you an opportunity that people in other jobs don't get. And this opportunity is to change and to be confronted with your weaknesses and to adapt if you want. And it always is the case, I believe quite strongly, that if you trade long enough and you do this for enough time and through enough cycles and enough trades in different markets, you will be confronted with those things that you don't like about yourself. And you'll be confronted with those things that you consider to be your Achilles heels and those sorts of things. And so I think that's kind of cool that we can do that. We don't necessarily have, that doesn't mean that we have to become the tippy top of the Maslow pyramid and self-actualize and all that. It just means that we have some things that we're going to be confronted with because we've chosen this path as traders. And that's something that I think a lot of people probably don't even acknowledge until they've been in it for a long time. So I think that what you've highlighted here is a really important aspect of trading, Darren.
Yeah, and I think we kind of naturally undervalue experience as well, don't we? We all know that being mega rich doesn't necessarily make you happy, but at the same time we all know that having a little bit more money certainly makes life comfortable. and enjoyable. If you can have more holidays and a bit of a nicer car and things like that, then yeah, sure, they're great. But the sort of gut instinct is to think that more and more is always better. It's not the case, and you should really take that into account with your trade. Well, I do anyway. I'm in a comfortable place with my trading, so why change? I mean, obviously I'm trying to make a little bit more money all of the time, but I'm not kind of like racing to be mega rich, and I'm not even considering it. I mean, if it does happen, then fair enough, but I don't think it will, because it doesn't tick my boxes. And if I did make a bit more money next year, I'd just trade less and go on more holidays. So it's not going to lead me to that point of being mega rich, because I'm just going to spend another month on the beach, because that or not just on the beach, but traveling and those experiences tick my box more. So yeah, so I don't think I'll ever be rich in money, but I want to be rich in experience. And I think perhaps people with like big families and lots of kids to put through university might see things like slightly differently. So I think it's going to be personal for every trader.
Absolutely, yeah. I think one of the things you bring up, which reminds me of a story that I just feel like I have to tell now. My friend, so you're talking about having fast cars or expensive cars or whatever. Well, a friend of mine, he's done well, and he was talking about how a lot of things are going on in his life, and sort of like a what if situation. So what if this happens, and what if my business falls apart, and what if, you know what I mean? And I said to him, I said, because I'm not really into cars, and one of the reasons why I live where I do is because I love walking everywhere. I've driven so much in my life. I'm at the point now where if I can have a really easy life where I don't have to drive a lot of places, I'm so happy. So that's why I've chosen to live where I do, because everything's kind of right there. And what was interesting about my friend is I said, because in Australia the cars are very expensive, Darren. So if you've got these really expensive cars, they even throw these massive taxes on them. So a car that would cost $100,000 in the US might be $250,000 in Australia, just because of the luxury car tax and all that. So yeah, so he's saying, what if this happens? What if that happens? And he's like, well, I've got this and I've got that. And I said to him, hey man, I said, you've also got like $270,000 locked up in your car. You could also unload that. I'm like, you know what I mean? It's funny how what's important to us, we forget. You've got all I've got all these surfboards. So I've got all this money locked up in surfboards. My friend's got all this money locked up in his car. We forget that what's important to us, whether it's traveling or cars or surfboards or whatever it is, that's going to be kind of our focus. And the same thing happens with our trading, isn't it? Our trading is just kind of that key that unlocks what you want. For a lot of people, it's just, I want to get out of my job. I want to have a situation where if I want to go to Spain, I can go to Spain. I don't have to ask my boss, hey, boss, can I go to Spain for 7 days? You know what I mean? Are you going to fire me if I do that? You know what I mean? Like, those are the sorts of things that people are into. But I think what you bring up is interesting, because I can list a whole bunch of, just being the contrarian here, that we like to take the contrarian view. One of the things I think of is, do you really want to be trading do you want to be trading big positions? And let's think about some of the reasons why you might not want to do that as a trader. Well, number one, if you're trading really big positions, you got to think about the safety of your money. And as we all know, we've all heard, and if you're new to the Forex game, you should know, if you haven't heard, that your brokers can go bust. They do and have and will go bust. And if that happens, that often means that you will get pennies on the dollars that you are holding with your broker. So when you're a retail Forex trader, you have to acknowledge the fact that the money that you give your broker, you may never see again. And that includes the money that you give your broker and you build up to a bigger account size. That also may be gone. So these are the things that people don't think about. And so, when you get to a certain level, you got to think, okay, am I going to stay in retail Forex, or am I going to move to closer to the interbank market? And if I do that, what happens? Well, your deposit requirement goes up. You got to think about which broker you're going to use, what kind of leverage are you going to get. Maybe you'll get 3-to-1, right? Maybe you're getting 200-to-1 leverage now with your broker in retail Forex world. You go to the interbank market and you're getting 2-to-1 or 3-to-1 leverage. So everything changes when you get really big. And people forget that it's not just as simple as taking a little 1,000-pound account and running it up to 100 million pounds. It's just not, these things are a little bit more complex than that.
Yeah, we all start off that way, though, don't we? I think that's the thought that we have in our heads, and it does change over time. I see it as a job now. I see it as a career.
Yeah.
And I say, okay, what do I want from my perfect job? And I want X amount of salary, and I want X amount of time to do other things. And as long as it fulfills that for me, then why do I need anything more?
Yeah, exactly. And so here's the thing. That sounds like, and I could be wrong, but that sounds like to me what's happening with you is you're trading an account and you're making money in your account, and you're pulling money out and you're using that money to do things, right?
Yeah. My account doesn't grow.
Exactly. Yeah. This is another thing that people forget about. When you're trading, if you leave the money in and you compound it, that's great, but now you're opening yourself up to the exposure of your broker. Like, how safe is your money with the broker that you've chosen? Do you have one broker? Do you have two? Do you have three? Where is your money located? And the other thing is, now what you're basically doing is you're taking those fun tickets, right? That possible fun that you can have with that money, and you're delaying that if you're not taking money out. If your goal is to compound and grow an account really big, that's great. But you still run the risk that your broker can go bust between now and wherever your goal is, if you have one. And two is, you don't get to have that fun that you've worked so hard to build up in your account. So some traders, I think, are much better off not compounding and doing basically what Darren does, which is, look, this is a job. I use it to make money, and when I make money, I take that money out and I go buy a motorcycle, or I go traveling, or do whatever I want to do. So these are the things that people forget, that just because you're a trader, it doesn't mean that you can take that 1,000-pound account and run it up to 100 million and be all private jets and mincing with models. That's not really the normal that's not the normal game, right? I mean, these are the things that, and a lot of traders I know, professional traders I know, do exactly what Darren does. I mean, this is something that I think is important to remember. I like to take money out of the broker's hands, because when you do that, that means that money is now yours. If you leave that money in the broker's account, doesn't matter how long it's been in there. It doesn't matter how big you've grown it. That money isn't really yours until it hits your account. So it's something to keep in mind, people, that this is a risk. It's a very risky game to have. I believe it's a very risky game to have all of your money in one broker's account, and I think it's even risky to have all of your trading capital with any retail forex broker. I think there are better places to have your trading capital than to giving it all to your retail forex broker. It might be better suited left somewhere else.
Okay, that's it for part 1. In part 2, you will learn how our goals determine our outcomes when it comes to trading. You'll also see how your trading fits into your life and how you can make that fit in more comfortably. And Darren gets into this idea of the questions you are asking and how this really determines whether or not you've explored what trading really means to you and what you're going to get out of your trading. It's a fascinating discussion. We also talk about the no-loss trading system, so this is something you should definitely pay attention to, and what you must be comfortable with to succeed at trading over the long haul. And finally, we also look at ice cream businesses and forex trading, their differences and similarities. All of this and more in part 2.